Good morning. It's Sunday, August 30th, 2020. And I got to thinking this morning about the United States, about America. And I have more history in America than most people. I'll be 80 this year. And I was very aware of what was going on in America since I was about 6 or 7. Politically, you couldn't help it. You noticed it. I don't remember FDR at all, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but I do remember Truman. And he wasn't a very personable guy. I didn't love him as a kid. I thought he was stern and mean. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't happy. He had a very stern way about him. But then, this was 1946, 47, and he was a soldier. He had fought in the Second World War, or the First World War, the First World War. And he knew what combat was about, and that leaves an impression on anybody's brain and psyche who has been through it. But he was a very strong and firm guy, and made some huge decisions. The dropping 2 atom bombs on Japan. I mean, those are heavy, weighty decisions that one must live with. And I knew people who didn't like Harry Truman. I knew they were Republicans, business people, who thought Harry Truman was the scourge of the earth, that Dewey should have won. And I didn't quite understand why they hated him so much. I didn't get why they hated. But these were business people, Republican business people who didn't like Harry Truman. But Harry Truman led a very organized government. The government functioned beautifully under him. And he didn't run or couldn't run. I don't remember which one it was in 52. And Dwight Eisenhower ran. And right away I knew that, I believe it had to be against Adlai Stevenson. I'm sure he ran against Stevenson twice. And I knew that Eisenhower was going to win. I knew it. He was very popular. I mean, he had just helped us win the Second World War. I mean, helped the Allies. As we know, Russia had a lot more to do with that, with the defeating of Germany than we did, and we were strong and instrumental. And there's no putting down what we sacrificed in that war. Russia sacrificed about 1 million, lost about 10 million soldiers or something like that. So you can't overlook that sacrifice. And the British and the French. Anyway, Eisenhower was I thought, a very good president. People, in retrospect, think he was a very good president. And he warned us about the military-industrial complex, and he warned us about a lot of stuff. But government ran well. He respected the government. He listened to his advisors. He was a general. He knew how to listen, and he did listen. And he took his job very seriously and worked at it. Then he ran. He had 2 terms. And in 1960, John Kennedy was elected. And John Kennedy was very smart, very suave, very sophisticated. And he made his share of mistakes, but he also, the world loved him. The world thought he was the coolest human being on the face of the earth, and he probably was at that point. But he and Robert Kennedy kept that government together. I mean, they didn't, not that it was falling apart, but they played by the rules, and they didn't Well, and they had very smart advisors who John Kennedy listened to carefully. Kennedy got assassinated. 1963, Lyndon Johnson came along. And Lyndon Johnson, while he was a creature of the Senate, and people criticized him for various things, personally, he was a very good president. He passed the Civil Rights Act. A Southerner from Texas. He passed the Civil Rights Act. He knew we were going to lose the South for years and years to come because of it. He knew it. But he passed it anyway. He was elected, he took over for Kennedy in 1963 and was reelected in 1964, ran until 1968 and decided not to run because the Vietnam War was killing him, apparently. So, that's what he did. He didn't run. Then Nixon became president in 1968. I guess he ran against George McGovern, I guess. Maybe that was when McGovern got involved in it. Nixon won handily, and was reelected in 1972, or would be 71. And then he took over in 72, and along came Watergate. Boom. He was gone. So his vice president, Gerald Ford, became president. Now, Gerald Ford spent 3 years in the presidency. I met him. I actually played down there for a White House concert. But the government was still very functional. The system of the Justice Department was the Justice Department. The Supreme Court was Supreme Court. Sure, people must have tried to persuade Supreme Court judges one way or the other, but either it was well kept under wraps, or perhaps it was not as, perhaps they didn't try to influence the Supreme Court. Nixon got impeached for breaking into the Democratic National Committee's office in the Watergate Hotel, and that's just seems like nothing compared to what we're seeing now. And he got impeached for it. So Gerald Ford became president. Gerald Ford just slogged along as president. I don't know that I don't know anything negative about him or particularly positive. And then along came Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was a peanut farmer, very peaceful man, under whom the economy just went crazy. The economy, inflation was up to like 18% or something like that. Interest rates, I remember interest rates during the Carter presidency were like 18-20%. It was crazy. And he served one term and lost to Ronald Reagan. But Carter kept our government intact. Carter did not try to corrupt our government. Carter did not try to tear it down. Then after Jimmy Carter came Ronald Reagan. Reagan had his Republican ideas about the economy, which have never worked. Lowering taxes and creating more business, and that's thus raising taxes. No, it doesn't work. It hasn't worked yet. And that's been the Republican mantra ever since. But Reagan was a good showman, concerned American, and not afraid to work. He had a lot of experience in legitimate work. And he lasted 8 years. What would that have been? 76? Yeah, 76, 1994. And in 1994, Bill Clinton was elected. And Bill Clinton had great respect for the institutions of our government, about our democracy. He was, he had his weaknesses, but he was elected for 8 years. And in 2000, 1999, George Bush beat Al Gore in the famous hanging Chad election. And George Bush, I like George Bush. I like what I see of him now very much. I like the speech he gave at a memorial for, was it George Floyd? Was it someone else? But he was, I think it was George, I don't know who it was for. But he spoke in a very serious way, and his heart was in it, and you could tell he meant it. He the whole Iraq fiasco was, I think, thrust upon him, and he didn't have the good sense to say no. And therefore, it happened under his watch, and he's responsible for it. And after George, but he respected the government. He kept the government together. He respected our democracy. He didn't try to tear it down. After George Bush, of course, came Barack Obama. And he was a wonk, among other things. A very emotional, beautiful speaker who I will never forget singing Amazing Grace at the funeral of, I guess it was the people killed in the church in Georgia, North Carolina. I don't remember where it was, but boy, what a beautiful speech. And when he sang Amazing Grace so beautifully, I was just stunned. And he was very serious about democracy, about keeping our government working, trying to improve it, etc., etc. He served 8 years. And in 2015, we elected Donald J. Trump, who has been president for almost 4 years now. And he, unlike the others, has shown no interest in governing other than to say yes to things that people propose to him that will make his friends money, make him money, and get him reelected. He's made some, I don't know why he pulled troops out of Syria. I don't know what that was about. And he doesn't concentrate. He doesn't listen. He doesn't read. And his complete failure in the coronavirus episode that we're still deeply in, his total failure to deal with it, it just indicates that he doesn't care. He doesn't really care. As long as he's okay, he's got his money, he's riding high, he's got that beautiful plane to ride around in. He can do what he wants. He can do what he wants. And he's a big shot. He's the center of attention. He gets people to tell him how good he is. But he's tearing the government apart. He's absolutely obliterated the Justice Department by putting Bill Barr in there, who just is a laughingstock, except it's not laughable. It's pitiful what Bill Barr is doing as Attorney General. Pitiful. Republicans in the Senate, well, we all know what they do. They just won't stand up to him. They won't stand up to him. They can't. Apparently, he's got so much power over them that he can't stand up. They can't stand up to him. And he's got an awful lot of Americans who like this big, tall, blonde liar. This guy who tells his lies with just such a straight face and such a calm demeanor. And he says, I'm the best thing that ever happened to African Americans, and I've made all my promises, and I fulfilled all my promises, and I've done everything I should do. And he just speaks clearly, as if there was just no hesitation whatsoever in his voice, no question, no doubt that everything he's saying is absolutely true. Whereas we know he's a liar. He doesn't tell the truth. He comes up with false facts, falsehoods, calls things hoaxes. He called the coronavirus a hoax. A hoax. Russia, no, nothing to do with Russia. I had nothing to do with Russia. Well, the facts show he had everything to do with. Everyone around him had something to do with Russia. And he's not the kind of guy to sit and not know what's going on about things like that, about corruption and about getting money. And he's put some real conservative nutcases on the Supreme Court. He's nominating conservative judges all over the country, people who have apparently almost no credentials, and he puts people in positions of power in his government who have no experience or credentials or knowledge of what it is they're doing, and they do terrible jobs. I mean, they just do whatever he wants, and he's trying to get rid of all the environmental rules, and everything he does is just, and wants to get rid of Obamacare, wants to get rid of Social Security, little things like that. And now he's running for president, and we know that he's running for re-election. And he's got much of the country snowed. He just talks this voice, and I'm going to make. Oh, I know what he'll say. And I gave $600,000 to every person in the country. But besides that, I did this with no stop, so you can't stop to think about what he just said, or he doesn't want you to stop and think about what he just said. So he talks on and on, and on and on, and on and on and on and on and on and on, and on and on. And people like him, big white guy with a blonde bush of hair, a real actor, a real show person who lies, and nobody cares. And the government is falling apart because of the government. And the point of my long lecture here, my 17-minute lecture, is that if he gets reelected, I don't think this country will ever be the same. I mean, I'm not being hysterical about it. I see where it's going now. I see where it's already gone. With the Justice Department so corrupted, the Senate just licking his boots. And if he has 4 more years of that, I fear for us all. I really do. I think the United States will never be the same. It will be an autocracy. It'll just be, the Trumps will run it for 10, 15 years with all the power that they found with the using of the government to get reelected. They're going to have a complete stranglehold on this country, and there's going to be plenty of white people who want it that way. Now, if all the people, all the minorities in this country voted, they could get him out. But I don't think they will. I don't mean this as a criticism because people don't vote. I do mean it as a criticism. Because if everybody who didn't want him in office voted, he wouldn't be in office. I don't think, unless he found some way to deal with it, which he will certainly look for. He will not give up that office without a real fight. I don't care how much he loses by. But he has to lose. He has to lose big. Big. And our country's future depends on it. And there's a lot of people whose survival depends on it. So, just think about that for a little while. Okay.